Last time we talked about why so many people today in our modern world seem to lack meaning in their life. Well, I think there's more to learn here. I think this is a really important topic. So we're going to try to dive deeper into this. Okay, and for any of you that missed the last video, quick version, in order for something to have meaning, we need to know something about it. Okay, and my favorite example right now that I like using for this is architecture, and I know most of you could not care less about architecture. Most people couldn't now, and most people today know absolutely nothing about it. Okay, but back in the 1920s, they did know about architecture. And this was something that could be discussed amongst different people, so this was a cultural thing. And they built beautiful homes in the 1920s. I'm going to say that's the golden age of architecture here in America. Okay, let's apply all of this to our homes today. What I said to start with. In order for something to have meaning, we need to know something about it. Most of us today know absolutely nothing about our homes. We don't know what architectural style it is. We don't know how it was built because we don't know nothing about home construction. Okay, so essentially our homes are just boxes. They're meaningless. And not just our homes, but all of the homes in our communities and in our cities and towns and the buildings and everything else. So we're essentially surrounded by meaninglessness. We don't know anything about any of the physical items we're surrounded by now. They have no significance other than they're just a thing. Okay, well, what we got into last time was the abstract and the real being integrated. Okay, an example I used before was my friends back when the superhero movies came out. They were really excited. For them, that was a cultural event. They were into the comics, so that when the movies came out, they're looking at the movies. Okay, they got this part right because it referenced the comics from this period, and then they messed up this, and talked about it amongst themselves, and they had a great time with it. The thing is, that's entirely abstract. Superheroes aren't real. The movies aren't real. We're just seeing light on a screen. Okay, so they're excited about something that's not real, and they don't know anything about the actual physical things they're surrounded by, which have no meaning. I think that's our problem today. Why there is so much meaninglessness. The things around us that we're surrounded by are meaningless. Okay, and for me, what I'm trying to figure out now is how to get the abstract and the actual everyday integrated again. And I'm not seeing how to do this. And I think God is absolutely critical for this. Religion. Okay, that's, I think, takes the abstract and the real and connects them. And when we lose God, we lose that connection and things separate. And I'm just now realizing how much. Before I thought, okay, so many of us now, we're just living our lives online and all abstract. But I'm just now realizing that no, things are just things now. Buildings. Most buildings now are how cheap and how fast can you build this building so it can serve this purpose. That's it. As a result, most of the modern buildings today are just ugly. I mean, they're just things. Okay, go back to the 1920s, 30s. You've got the Empire State Building. Okay, it's still a thing, it's still a building, but it's a pretty one. There's some actual thought that went into the architectural style of that building. They spent some extra money to make it look that way. And I think it was Art Deco. Okay, we can see that in automobiles, 1950s, built some beautiful cars. Okay, well, there were thoughts and philosophies that went into that. Again, that was Art Deco also. Okay, today our cars are just boxes with wheels. They're just things to get us from point A to point B. I don't know how we fix this. I don't see this getting any better. And yeah, I'm going to blame our educated class on this. Okay, I'm going to blame the hippies. I blame them for everything. But, okay, 1960s. That's when, hey, we don't need religion, we want our communist utopia, and everything just became intellectual. Okay, so I think that's when our elites became completely removed from the everyday real. Okay, and I think that's why we have such political polarization, or a big part of it now in our country. Okay, so we've got people that if they can afford it, they're living in a completely abstract world, completely separated by reality, where we've got so many of us working class people that we're surrounded by reality. Okay, but most of us meaningless, and we're just looking at money. And let's go back to the 1920s. I think this will better explain this. Okay, a lot of people in the 1920s were just struggling to get by. I mean, not just everybody could go pick an architectural style. Okay, a lot of people were just dirt poured in. Okay, but the people that were educated, that knew this stuff, they were going and having crafts people build their homes and making beautiful homes. Okay, so they would actually develop a relationship with the architects in designing their home, and then extremely skilled craftspeople came in and built these things, especially with craftsman style home. That was the philosophy behind that. We want this made by talented craftsmen. Okay, there's no connection now between our wealthy people and our working class. It's just completely separate. Our working class is just labor now. Okay, our homes are just homes now. And even amongst our elites, okay, yeah, their box is bigger than our box, but most don't know anything about their box. So, hey, it's just as meaningless for them as it is for us. Their box is just bigger. Their car is just as ugly. And Donald Trump, okay, this would be a good example. Forgetting his politics, any of the chaos going on right now, any of that, I thought his style was very gaudy in his hotels. Okay, it just seemed like everything he wanted, just make it flashy and expensive. Okay, that's most of us now. He didn't create that problem. He's like the rest of us. He was just following the trends at the time. Let's just make this look expensive. Great big giant gold letters, and again, just gaudy. Well, that's our homes now. I want my home to look more expensive than this one. All right. Old money versus new money. I think this is, here we go. This is a good one. People, new money, back in the day, this was actually a thing. Old money, and they would look down on people with new money. And okay, I didn't have any money, so it didn't matter to me, and I still don't. But okay, people with new money, they would just buy things to be flashy. All of a sudden, they've got money, let's go buy stuff. Okay, with people with old money, they would try to make more informed decisions, things that were more culturally appropriate. And well, they were right for a lot of what they were doing, I think. The old money. Okay, they were trying to maintain those architectural styles, often Greek revival when we're talking that kind of money, but you get the point. They were trying to maintain culture. Okay, and that's what a lot of this comes down to, is culture. Okay, versus now, it's Donald Trump, certainly not new money, but it's that new money mentality of just make it flashy. Well, that's all of us now. And we're surrounded by meaningless. This is expensive. Therefore, it must be nice. And there's no other thought into it than that. Okay, so how do we bring that back? How do we integrate the two? And we can see this in the arts too. I was thinking for a moment, okay, maybe movies could help with this, and we can see the same problem here. Okay, and I heard Andrew Clavin one time during an interview, he said, when an art is at its peak, it's when the general public and the critics both agree on what's great. Okay, so I think it's 1939, we had Wizard of Oz and Gone with the Wind coming out in the same year. And both were critically acclaimed, both won Oscars, both were loved by the public. Right, versus today, our movies now, either the critics love them and the public hates them, or the public loves them and the critics hate them. I think that's exactly what this is. Okay, Wizard of Oz. Extremely abstract elements there, but it's still also grounded in reality. She lived on a farm. Okay, how many movies today are going to be about someone that lives on a farm? Gone with the Wind, again, abstract elements. This was, an idealized past before the Civil War, but then there were also elements of reality, and that just about everybody in the South was absolutely dirt poor after the Civil War. Okay, it was a war, our area got torched and burned and all of that good stuff. Now, what critics like is it's completely abstract, completely removed from reality, and then what normal everyday people like is just gritty, and it's, this is action. Okay, so there's no deeper thought or meaning in it. Okay, completely separate. So how do we bring this back? And I think a big part of this is God is what keeps the two integrated for us. Okay, so as a Christian, when I look at the world, I can look at something beautiful, something objectively beautiful. That's something most modernists would say there is no objective beauty, but I disagree. I think there is. I think that's because I'm a Christian and I can look at something that almost all of us, when we look at it and say, oh, that's beautiful, for me, that's a creation of God. Okay, so I can believe in objective beauty, and we all do. There are some things we can all look at and say, that's just beautiful. Like a really great architectural style. Okay, so I think when we lose that religious element, I think that's where that separation comes from. And if we look at a communist state, a government building here, okay, there's no beauty in a government building. How cheap and how fast can you build this? Which I get it. I mean, we're talking taxpayer dollars here, and there's a lot of corruption that they've got to pay for, and kickbacks and all of that stuff. So they can't go splurging on architectural styles. I get it. But they managed to find a way in the past that when they built a public building, it was pretty. Okay, well, that made the whole community look better, and it gave the community a sense of pride. We're proud of this building. Versus now, okay, well, again, communist buildings, they were, how cheap, how fast can you build this? China. Look at the cities, the empty cities that are just sitting there. They're also ugly. How cheap, how fast can you build this? So, I don't know how we bring the two back. And our upper class, our elites, they've got to be leading on this charge on this, because they have the spare time and hopefully the intellectual horsepower to actually get into some of this stuff and figure out how to connect the two again. And I think that's something working class and our elites now just are two separate worlds. We can see it in our politics. This is our crazy leftist liberals versus MAGA. That's what we're seeing there. MAGA is working class. Okay, whereas the working class were completely abandoned by the leftists because they're caught up in abstract ideologies. They're not having to deal with the everyday consequences of things like, let's defund the police. We need these things integrated again, not just for our own benefit, just again, for us as individuals to look around us and things, see things of beauty, and for things to have meaning, and for us to live in a meaningful place. But we also need this on a national level just so we can get past whatever crazy period this is right now. Okay, that's as deep as my shallow mind can go with this. And I have no doubt that some smart person has wrote about this in the past and explained it far better than I could ever hope to. And if any of you know who that person is, please leave a comment below. I would love to read their work. Okay, but until then, I'm trying to figure this out as best as I can. I do think this is important. And I'm hoping to implement some of this in what I'm doing. Okay. I'm almost finished with the framing on the house for those of you who have been keeping up with that, and I'll explain more about that later. I just got a gut check today on that though. I thought I was done with the framing and then realized, oh no, I got to go back and I got another day here. So anyway, once I get into the trim work and that type thing, I'm trying to integrate some of this, what I was talking about for architectural styles, into what I'm doing. Okay, with as little as I know. And I'm hoping this turns out looking nice. I mean, really nice. And I don't mean this box looks better than this box. I mean for it to actually be meaningful. Okay, well, hey, hopefully here before long we'll find out. Okay, God bless and have a great evening.